NATO is currently preparing for war. Just days before Donald Trump's inauguration, NATO military chief Mark Rutte claims that NATO is not prepared enough for a potential conflict with Russia, so he's demanding that countries spend more into NATO. NATO officials are claiming that the organization must maintain a warlike mindset in preparation for future conflict with Russia. So essentially, NATO plans to throw the world into global war in a temper tantrum over losing the Ukraine proxy war. It's extremely concerning that NATO members are beating the war drums just a few days before Donald Trump is set to be inaugurated. Isn't it strange that NATO is calling for war, even though Donald Trump has made it 100% clear that he wants to pursue peace with Russia? I know that Europe is not delusional enough to believe that they are going to defeat Russia without the help of the United States. But despite what the corporate media has said, Donald Trump has been a strong advocate of other countries spending more into the NATO alliance. Donald Trump wants to see NATO countries drastically spike their military spending, increasing their target goal from 2% to 5%. If Donald Trump truly wants peace, why does he want NATO to spend so much on their military? Trump also proposed an absolute joke of a peace plan that the Russians are not even taking seriously. So are NATO members escalating their rhetoric and jacking up their military spending with the belief that Donald Trump won't be able to secure peace in Ukraine? Either way, there must be a massive political consequence for the ruling class in the West who are obsessed with waging war and jacking up military spending instead of taking care of their own people. Joe Biden, during his farewell address, acknowledged that America is quickly becoming an oligarchy, as if he didn't serve the oligarchy for the last 50 years.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms.
This is just a transparent attempt by Joe Biden to save his absolutely pathetic legacy. Joe Biden is decrying the development of an oligarchy, even though the top 1% in the billionaire class seen a record boom in their wealth during the Joe Biden regime. Joe Biden, when he was a senator, was known as the senator of the MBNA. He served the credit card companies. Credit card companies and Zionist lobbying groups completely made Joe Biden's entire career. Joe Biden, during his speech, decried the influence of dark money in our politics, despite the fact that no politician in modern American history ever received more dark money than genocide Joe Biden. Literally everything in Biden's speech he's decrying, he's responsible for. And there's nothing more nauseating than watching these sycophantic liberal corporate media talking heads drool all over Joe Biden, praising him for this self-serving speech.
Have you seen any evidence of Biden doing anything about the oligarchy during his 4 years of presidency that he warns about?
Well, in fairness, he has been on domestic issues the most progressive president since FDR.
Meanwhile, liberal corporate media is wondering why they are dying and no one takes them seriously. The biggest joke of the speech is how Joe Biden was decrying the fact that big tech companies will no longer engage in government-sponsored censorship.
I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation.
So let me get this straight. According to Joe Biden and Democrats, it's an oligarchy when big tech declines to coordinate with the government in order to crack down on free speech. Another example of how modern liberalism is a completely incoherent and unhinged ideology.
I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and, in fact, ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student in college.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School. I mean, this guy comes off this whole thing as a flyweight.
Now Biden says Newsweek is right. His memory had failed him.
What's poppin'? My friends, my family, welcome to another edition of RBN Live. We have a great one. This has been a week full of bangers. And I call that video, my editor, Greg, did amazing there. That's the official roast of Joe Biden on his way out. Good riddance. And that was, as I said, a desperate attempt of him trying to carve some sort of legacy. His legacy at the end of the day would be genocide. Anthony Blinken, he can't even give a press conference without being exposed as the genocider he is. You have Anthony Blinken, all these people in the Biden administration that are now in full PR mode, trying to save their legacy, and they all crafting these compilation videos. Like, I wonder how much time they spent on this. You guys see, the number one priority of these Biden sycophants is to try to clean up their foreign policy legacy. Now, here, Lloyd Austin is pretending that Joe Biden didn't plunge Europe into a failing war against Russia that tanked multiple world leaders. We call it the Zelensky curse. In the wake of Russia's unjust, full-scale invasion of Ukraine, I assembled an international coalition of some 50 countries to help Ukraine fight for its freedom. Hey, quick question, Biden. How many of those leaders that started off this war still in charge? Including you, including Justin Trudeau, including Boris Johnson. The list goes on and on. So we're in a position right now with Biden trying to rehabilitate his image. And NATO, and I'm going to introduce our guest. We have an amazing guest today. Join us, Danny Haiphong. In my first intro clip, and this is what the Biden legacy is, building up NATO. And NATO's number one priority, like Mark Rutte said, they want European countries to spend less on social spending. They are actively calling for cuts in European healthcare. And Donald Trump is now calling for a 5% military spending goal, a drastic, over 2 times cut when the old goal used to be 2%. And many European countries are trying their best to reach it. And why are they spending all this money? This is what I'm very interested in talking to Danny about, and the reason why the ruling class is in shambles. NATO wakes up to the Chinese threat. And this is what the Trump people have been open about, that they don't want conflicts in the Middle East. They don't want conflicts in Ukraine, so they can focus on China. So now do you guys see why the ruling class is melting down at the idea of Americans talking to Chinese people across the Pacific? And with that said, I would love to get the thoughts of our amazing guest here, host of the Danny Haiphong Show, great geopolitical analyst and journalist. Thank you for joining us on RBN once again, Danny Haiphong.
Thanks for inviting me, Nick. Good to be back with you.
Yeah, there's so many things I want to talk about. We definitely want to dive into the Rednote thing, which is extremely fascinating. But before we do that, I want to ask you about your thoughts on the Biden legacy. We saw Blinken being yelled at by Max Blumenthal and being called out by Sam Husseini. And Blinken can't go anywhere in public without being smeared as a genocider. There are people who've been camped out outside his house for the last year and a half, essentially. So before we get started to the fun Rednote story, what are your final impressions of the Biden legacy as he leaves office?
Well, there's a lot that could be said about this, but maybe I'll take a different angle from what might be obvious for those who have been following the Biden administration, especially his foreign policy of course, the legacy of genocide, the legacy of Cold War, the legacy of bringing the world closer to World War III in nuclear war with Russia. Those are maybe low-hanging fruit. But maybe the most important, in my opinion, part of Joe Biden's legacy is actually more positive than what many people would assume. Joe Biden's administration has been an absolute disaster for the U.S. empire. The United States' empire came into the Biden administration looking to remain in kind of a period of stagnation in terms of its foreign policy. It was hoping to just move along, inch along forward in its Cold War with Russia and China and keep West Asia, keep the Middle East kind of stagnant without much movement there on all fronts. But as the Joe Biden administration reached its halfway point, there was already a conflict in Ukraine brewing, bigger and more dangerous than any conflict, perhaps in recent history when it comes to its global implications. So the Biden administration absolutely accelerated this, but what it really did was it accelerated the multipolar world. So when the Biden administration decided that it was going to essentially cross Russia's red line regarding Ukraine, arm Ukraine to the teeth, and reject all of Russia's security concerns and security interests, it was essentially declaring an all-out war on Russia, and it was wanting to do this via Ukraine. And that was just a demonstrative failure. Ukraine's military, Ukrainian society, it is essentially finished and over. There really is nothing left. All that's left is the rudiments of what still is a pretty massive number of Ukrainians who are being thrown out into the front lines in order to be killed and destroyed. That is what is left of Ukraine. Soon, they won't have any weapons left to speak of. And when they continuously get resupplied in the last days of the Biden administration, that may be it. We don't know. Donald Trump may turn off the spigot. He may not. But regardless, the United States really isn't in a position to continue arming Ukraine like it is right now in the same way. It's no longer going to be able to remake 1, 2, 3, 4 militaries, because that's how many that Russia has destroyed up until this point. But then comes West Asia and the genocide in Gaza. And of course, this is a focal point of Biden's legacy. But it's even bigger than the genocide, because what the genocide did was it sparked a regional war. And really what it did is it sparked and accelerated a resistance war, which many people have been very doom and gloom about lately, especially since the fall of Syria and the ceasefire in Lebanon. Now the ceasefire in Gaza is going to create a perhaps a point of reflection for many people. But if we look at what has actually transpired since October 7, 2023, what we have seen actually is forces of resistance, what people call the axis of resistance, strengthen and unify. Actually, many people think it's weakened because Israel struck Iran, Israel did the pager attack, Israel took out Hassan Nasrallah. Yes, all of these things were incredible setbacks. And of course, the Syrian government fell. These are all incredible setbacks. However, they're setbacks in the context of what was a growing and building force of resistance that still does exist. Ansarallah, even today, Yemen, continues to hit Israel because, as you all may know, the ceasefire hasn't necessarily gone into effect just yet. And Israel is taking credit for airstrikes on Yemen. The US and the UK continue to try to destroy Ansarallah through a massive bombing campaign. None of it's working. But Ansarallah was added, Yemen's, what people call the Houthis, replete and armed with hypersonic missiles. They continue to strike Israel. Iran has just demonstrated it has massive air defense capabilities still, and that if the United States and Israel want to go to war with Iran, it will be a disaster for the United States and for Israel. And we can go down the line. Hezbollah, while it has been maybe brought back from its strongest position under Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah still exists. And Hezbollah has gone through much worse conditions than what exists now. It's been fighting for decades against Israel with far worse in terms of military capabilities and has beaten back Israel. So I am actually confident that Hezbollah still exists And if the time and the need is there, it will be able to go toe-to-toe again, which it did when Israel tried to invade southern Lebanon in October. So all in all, what we've seen is what the Biden administration has done is through the Ukraine war, it has actually strengthened Russia by forcing Russia to optimize its military. It has also strengthened Russia economically because of the 16,000 plus sanctions on Russia, which forced Russia to industrialize and to nationalize and to prioritize its own economic interests and also accelerate the movement toward a multipolar world. This brought Russia, of course, much closer to China, but it also brought Russia much closer to the global south, and much of the global south ended up rejecting the sanctions anyway. So Russia's economy is not on the verge of collapse. Russia's political system is certainly not on the verge of collapse. And I would argue that in West Asia, too, a nation like Iran and the axis of resistance is for sure not dead. If it was dead, then Hamas and the Palestinian resistance, I don't believe, would be able to secure, or there would be any appetite or interest to even create the semblance or the veneer of a ceasefire like what we see now. I believe Donald Trump did this because the Biden administration, first of all, was not, the legacy of the Biden administration has been, we're in no position to handle this crisis. We don't want to. We see Israel as the primary force that is projecting U.S. interests in the region. So we're not going to touch them. That was the Biden administration's position. Donald Trump is coming in a different political situation. I don't believe Donald Trump is anti-Zionist or believes that he needs to control Israel. I don't believe that at all. But what Donald Trump does believe in is coming into the presidency of the United States, not having an active genocide, at least at the public relations standpoint, occurring when everyone knows in U.S. politics, the first 100 days are critical to an administration, especially one that could be as fragile and frail as the Trump administration, because the entire establishment is not a big fan of Donald Trump, and they find anything to try to undermine his legitimacy, which is big. Not so much big for ordinary people and what happens in our lives, but in terms of U.S. politics, bourgeois politics, ruling elite politics, it matters. So that's the only reason I believe Donald Trump had an interest of creating a public relations environment where he doesn't come in for doesn't come in with an active genocide occurring. He's coming in saying he's going to be powerful and tough and end the Ukraine war, you know, all of this. And I believe it's all because the new U.S. administration that he is taking over for, its primary legacy has been to degrade actually the U.S. empire's position. That really is the Biden legacy, but really it would be the legacy of anybody. If it was Trump before Biden, if Trump had won in 2020, I think the same situation would have occurred, because it really isn't about U.S. presidents. It's about the condition and state of the empire as a whole. It has a primary objective of moving toward the destruction of Russia and China. And the only way it can do that is by ensuring that all the dominoes that align and that look at China, which is essentially most of the world, that look at China and Russia as alternatives, are overthrown, which is why I believe Iran has been such a principal target here. It's why Israel cannot stand Iran, because they want greater Israel, and the United States wants greater Israel, so the United States can maintain its legitimacy and dominance in the region. So that's why Iran is always on the chopping block. So all of this is to say is that Biden's legacy is, yes, genocide. It's endless war. It's bringing us closer to World War III. However, it's also the acceleration of multipolarity and the alternative to the U.S. empire, which is being led by Russia, China, Iran, and the forces of the global south, which are doing everything that they can, despite all kinds of criticisms against them, to develop an alternative financial and political architecture in the international arena.
Yeah, that was a great breakdown of the failure of the Biden administration. And I've been thinking a lot about the Trump ceasefire and his angle. And like you said it really well, how the empire doesn't really change that much between presidents. They reposition themselves. And I think I said it before, Donald Trump like completely baited Biden with his extreme far-right rhetoric on Gaza. Biden followed him, and then Trump pulled back because Trump is looking to implement a more strategic Zionism. And I've been thinking about this a lot because the topic we're talking about, Danny. We're talking about how Biden foreign policy has been an abject failure. Israel's war against Hamas has been an abject failure. You had IDF members coming back into Israel in body bags after their incursions into northern Gaza. So Trump, in the position that he's in right now, wanted to pursue a strategic Zionism where he allows Israel to continue to implement terrorism in the West Bank, have a refocus on Iran and Syria, instead of just being blindly loyal, blindly sycophantic, and ineffective, because that's what Biden was. Biden's completely exposed the rules-based order because of his weakness, which led to what you said earlier. There's many things to break down in your analysis, which led to your what you said in the global South abandoning the United States. There was a lot of many East Asian countries that was willing to do business with the United States that was disillusioned. There are a lot of countries in Eastern Europe that was explaining how after the NATO war, which they was 100% supportive of, they believed the United States stood for rules. There was sweet summer children, but they believed the United States stood for something. But after that, it was a facade the entire time after seeing what the Biden administration did to Israel, which make them way less likely to want to do business with the United States. Russia and China becoming closer together, India and China want to do business with each other. This is all the failures of the Biden administration. That's why he did a good job breaking it down. And Trump, it seemed like he just don't want to take as many L's as the Biden administration. I want to get your last thoughts on this. And I got this funny video clip because I also enjoyed your breakdown about the state of the resistance. And it's good not to have a super pessimistic view for a change. I do believe the resistance was definitely hurt because obviously they was in a very strong position before. But the reason why Benjamin Netanyahu, despite taking massive political blowback for accepting a ceasefire deal, that's because of the victories of the resistance. Israel's believed that the Palestinians would surrender, and when they didn't, it caught them off guard. They put Israel in a geopolitical position where they had to negotiate. When they said, and this is what Ben Gvir said, and I'm sorry, I'll pass to you, Danny. They were very thought-provoking what you said earlier. But Ben Gvir said that accepting the ceasefire is a defeat, unapologetically. So the Palestinian resistance, and I guess you could say that actions of resistance overall led to conditions for Israel to have to negotiate. But Danny, anything you want to add? Anything you agree with? Anything you want to put back on? What's your thoughts?
Well, I want to say this about Israel, because when people look at what's happened, every time I publish a video about this, I get a lot of comments like this. Gaza's no more. Gaza's been decimated. The genocide has eliminated, I think it's somewhere or somewhere around 50,000 so-called either combatants, as Israel would call them, or civilians in the line of war. So, being burned alive because of air raids or what have you. Of course, the number is much larger because of the uninhabitable conditions of Gaza. Now upwards of 200, 300,000, some are saying. So when you look at it that way, you could say, yes, this is an unimaginable catastrophe. And that would be fact. That would be 100% true. But then to equate that with Israeli victory, with some kind of nonstop Israeli dominance, I think actually is a huge mistake to make. It not only because it's a huge subjective mistake, because it really is a misperception of what's actually going on, but just factually, it's not true, because this is the history of empire, especially the history of imperialism. The United States actually is going through this right now, and has gone through it in many different instances: Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan. We can go on and on and on about the number of times the United States has attempted to expand its reach and its dominance, and it has killed many, 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 many people, and ended up losing, ended up having to settle for either a compromise or a complete and utter defeat, like what Vietnam was. So Israel is really in that situation now in its particular stage of development. And Israel will never be the United States. Israel will never be able to establish itself as a colony like the United States was able to, where it was able to create a false and very much blood-stained reality where the anti-colonial forces, those forces who were colonized, the indigenous people here, were essentially decimated to the point of being unable to resist. That's never going to happen for Israel. Israel will never look like the United States. And why is that? Because already we see, even though Israel can kill so many people, Israel can reduce the population in Gaza greatly, it can commit genocide, it has actually pulled itself into what some say, Foreign Affairs magazine, the rag of the Council on Foreign Relations, literally has said that Israel is in a long war of 8 fronts, and it even includes Israel as a 9th front. So Israel is at war with itself politically. It is at war on all of these fronts, and it is at war on these fronts forever. So forever means forever. It doesn't mean that there's going to be a point where where Israel forms some kind of greater Israel in the region and says, we have planted our flag, we are a state, we rule over these folk, we rule over these people. Never will that happen. Palestinians have already shown that will never even happen in Gaza. And Gaza is complete rubble. Gaza is rubble, but the Palestinian resistance is coming out from under the rubble, and they are not relenting. They are not holding up any white flag, and that will never happen. The same is happening in the West Bank. You have the Palestinian Authority shooting at Palestinians who are resisting, Al-Quds forces and others who are resisting in the same way. But this isn't even to get to all of these other fronts, from Hezbollah, which, if we see Nasrallah and the fall of Syria and all of that as a setback for Hezbollah, there is no doubt that Hezbollah has military capabilities that still can push Israel back if the situation and conditions call for it. There's no doubt that Iran is not going to go out without a fight. It is not Syria. Syria was unable to recover from a dirty war that the United States waged against Syria. Israel was a player in it, but come on, let's be honest. It was a minor player. It helped fund some of the groups. It helped treat some of the groups. It helped provide support. It bombed Damascus every other day. But the United States was the architect of that war. The United States waged that war from 2011 to, at least in terms of the proxies, 2018-19, whenever the Astana Agreement was reached. And that decimated Syria. And then Trump slammed the Caesar sanctions on Syria and destroyed the economy. Iran has been preparing for that scenario for 4+ decades. So that's not going to happen to Iran. Iran is not going to crumble economically, because guess what? It already has hundreds, thousands of sanctions on it, and its economy is stable enough. Iran has all of these defense capabilities that it had already demonstrated back in October. So, and those are not gone, contrary to what Israel says, because Israel says we hit all the S-300s, we hit everything, we destroyed Iran's air defense capabilities. And then Iran comes out with the Great Prophet military exercises and shows, hey, look at all these anti-ballistic missile, anti-aircraft defense systems. Look at what we have. We can use these. So the fact that Israel is not going to achieve what it wants, the Likud party, the major forces of Israeli expansionism, they want to essentially expand into the greater Israel project. That is never going to happen. They're not even going to be able to bring about a quote unquote social peace after genocide. This is what imperialist powers do. They bring about social peace for themselves after genocide so they can begin to reap the rewards. It's never going to happen. Hell, Ansarallah is never going to let them have peace because they have enough ballistic missiles to fire at them basically every other day and create pandemonium and havoc and, cause Israelis to trample over each other because they're scared of what's coming out of their skies. So in this sense, Israel is actually in a war of attrition. A war of attrition that's actually unprecedented because it's different from Russia's war of attrition. Russia chose that. Israel fell into that. And Israel is now trying to embark on a political and economic path, which is just outmoded in history. It will not happen. It can continue to kill people. It will continue to. Let's just be honest about that. It will create more and more humanitarian catastrophes. It's not over. The genocide isn't over. It attempts to expand into Lebanon and Syria and elsewhere to wage war with Iran. None of that is over. But to expect Israel to be able to come out of that planting its flags further and further and further into West Asia, outside of relatively sparsely populated territory in Syria, to me is a gross miscalculation of Israel's actual capabilities, because Israel has essentially thrown everything it had at Gaza. And now, as you said, Nick, we're already hearing the stories that Israel doesn't even have the manpower. It doesn't even have, like, with what people will this greater Israel project be ruled by when you don't even have the people, the settlers, to be able to fight? You think it's hard to fight an attrition war of expansionism and genocide in Gaza? Just wait till you have to expand further out into Syria, into Iraq, to Iran. You're not going to get there. You're not actually going to get, there's nothing. They're going to call on the European and American Zionists to do that? No, there aren't enough. Israel is really on borrowed time, actually. And its overall strategy, which is to kill everything that moves in order to bring about some kind of greater Israel to follow the United States' model of expansionism, is about a century too late. So this is why Israel actually cannot succeed in what it is hoping to do. And this is why you have, even though they're not ideological differences, it's not like the Netanyahu and the rest of the Israeli government are fighting over, well, maybe we should do it a different way. Maybe we should, not do genocide. Maybe we should not go to war with Iran. It's not like they're fighting over these kind of things. But that political crisis in and of itself demonstrates that there are cracks in the political architecture of the Zionist regime, which are really an outgrowth of the utter desperation that turns into rabid dogism, expansionism. That's really what Israel is on right now. It has taken that needle of whatever performance enhancing drugs it has, stuck it in its leg and said, we're going to take everything we got and we're just going to go. And we're just going to go full steam ahead. We're going to run over everybody, kill everything that moves. And then afterward, we'll say we won. Well, October 7, 2023 was a long time ago. We are now almost a year and a half since that time. And the only thing Israel can say is that it has killed a lot of people in Gaza. It has caused genocide and committed genocide. It has exploited a situation in Syria, which is not really of its own making and could very well blow back, because I don't believe Israel can really govern anything beyond its own current lines of settlement. I don't think it can. That's why do you think it's so hard for Israel to move into the West Bank further and further and create these settlements? That's a governing crisis. If you're a colony, you've got to govern the colonized. They cannot do it. It will never, ever be able to happen in a way that keeps Israel from being in a state of war. Now, the United States might be able to continue to pump money and arms into this war machine, this genocidal militarist war machine of Israel, for quite a bit longer. So it doesn't mean that this collapse is coming tomorrow, but it does mean that at any moment where the United States empire is in a fragile enough position where it sees its own interests being harmed by Israel, this is why I don't believe the Israel lobby is in total control. It's because I believe that there is an alignment of interests between Israeli lobby, Zionists, and the U.S. ruling elite. They're basically indistinguishable. But the minute that Israel's greater Israel project becomes anathema to the survival of the U.S. empire, the U.S. empire will pull back, if only to redirect itself toward other aims. So for now, we can say that Israel is here. Israel is causing all of this mass murder and genocide. But to say that it has won after almost a year and a half of endless genocide without being able to achieve essentially anything that it said it was going to achieve. Hamas is stronger than ever. The Palestinian resistance is stronger than ever. And the axis of resistance is not gone. It's not dead. And it could very well resurge in a period like this where Donald Trump is so unpredictable. The United States' political situation is so chaotic. Its foreign policy is in shambles, to take your words, Nick. It is very much outstretched. There is no telling what is going to happen from now into even just the next few months, meaning that whatever Israel has as its overall objectives, the only thing you can say is that it is well supplied by the United States, and everything else is really a question mark. And I think people have to begin to look at it like this, because the death and the destruction can be so difficult to watch and face and to witness. We all, of course, bear responsibility for ensuring that that stops. But to let that cloud the objective reality that many people in the region see it as. That's why people in Gaza were celebrating. They weren't celebrating because they're so desperate and no, they're celebrating because they survived and they resisted. They resisted and resisted and resisted until they got an outcome that was more favorable to them. And so that in and of itself, I think, is proof that we can't give Israel this veneer of invincibility when no such thing is the case.
Yeah, that's why the Christian Zionists are delusional right now. What that guy? I'm trying to think of his name. The Fox News guy. I think his name Mark Levin. Let me know in the chat. There's some crazy Zionist dude I saw a few days ago that was explaining how now's the time to hit Iranian nuclear facilities right now. He lives in this delusional fancy land, despite everything that we know about how the Biden administration enabled Israel. He was saying how the Biden administration was actually holding Israel back. The only reason why we haven't seen the complete destruction of the axis of resistance is because the fucking liberals holding back the great Israel. These are the Christian Zionist cucks that we talk about all the time. So they are completely delusional, believing that the only reason Israel has failed is because of Joe Biden, even though there's a fucking mental health crisis in the IDF right now. Their IDF soldiers talking about, I can't eat meat no more. Fuck you. Good. Hope you never have a burger again in your entire life. But the point is, there's a mental health crisis in the IDF. They are exhausted, guys. Israel is a country of 9 million people. And correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, I think the population of Iran is around 80 to 90 million. So what is Mark Levin saying? What is Marco Rubio saying? What are these people saying when they say that Israel needs to attack Iranian nuclear facilities and start a war with Iran? They are saying they want Americans to fight and die because you're delusional if you believe that Israel can fight Iran alone. And Danny, I know you have a few things you want to add. I want to end this segment on this clip, and then I'll pass it to you for your final thoughts. Sure. This clip was this final interview. This whole last week, like his entire presidency, had been a disaster. So he does this final interview. And there's so many like damning things that he says. Like at one point, the interview, who is his good friend, I think it's Lawrence O'Donnell, if I remember right. He gently asked him, just for example, he like, hey, President Biden, you was talking about oligarchy. What did you do in your presidency to stop the oligarchy? Word salad, like calmly and politely destroying Joe Biden in a softball interview. That's how incoherent Joe Biden's legacy and worldview is. So, and this is another example, the clip I'm going to show you here, where Lawrence O'Donnell, MSNBC, once again, is gently nudging Biden as much as possible. This is them just lightly mentioning, hey, man, Trump got a peace deal done. What the fuck? You said it wasn't possible, and Trump just got it done like that. Hey, man, what's up with that? So Biden's answer is way more damning than you can possibly imagine. So here is Joe Biden explaining why he didn't use the bully bullpit like Donald Trump did. And it is the worst possible answer. Now, I just want to wrap on this clip because I definitely want to make sure I show this week. Look at this answer by Joe Biden on why he didn't put Benjamin Netanyahu.
When I went to Israel, immediately after their attack by Hamas, 8 days later, whatever it was, and I told him we were going to help. And I said, but Bibi, I said, you can't be carpet bombing these communities. And he said to me, well, you did it. You carpet bomb, not his exact words, but you carpet bomb Berlin.
So I'm gonna let it continue. But essentially, Biden went to Benjamin Netanyahu like, hey man, you can't do whatever you want, bro. You can't destroy international law. So Benjamin Netanyahu was like, bro, you the biggest fucking war criminal of all time. What the fuck you think you talking to? And Biden's response to that essentially was, you're kind of right. You got a point there. Let me finish the clip and I'll get you in here, Danny. I only watch a few more seconds here.
You dropped a nuclear weapon. You killed thousands of innocent people because you had to in order to win a war. I said, but that's why we came up with the UN. New deals by which what we do relative to civilians and military.
And now you guys are waging a war against the International Court of Justice. You allowed Israel to slaughter UN workers. So, Danny, what are your thoughts on this? I want to move on to Rednote in China here soon, but I would love to get your thoughts on this. One of the worst answers you can think of, right, where BB was like, hey, man, you're a war criminal. He's like, you're right. I guess you're right. I can't really do anything to you then, I guess. What's your thoughts, Danny?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. The Biden, Joe Biden here. I mean, we can just look at him and see that he is not. He is the president of the United States, but he was not and is not operating as the president of the United States, because the way he speaks, the way he conducts himself, he is not fully present. So it's quite clear that he is talking in a manner of he's almost talking in a reflective manner, as one does when something happened 40 years ago. But actually, this is happening now, and he is acting like his conversations with Benjamin Netanyahu somehow started, began, and ended when this thing first began, when this genocide, when this just absolute all-out regional war began, led by Israel. But the fact is that the United States, the Biden administration, they are the ones who enabled this. They are the ones who facilitated it. And they are the ones who put a rubber stamp on it and essentially said this is not just the course that Israel should go in, but it's the course that the United States' empire should go in, that this is a time to say, okay, well, Netanyahu, you're telling me that you're in some kind of existential war of existence against fascism like in World War II. Well, okay, we are with you there. I guess Hamas are the new Nazis, right? Like, this is how absolutely craven and detached Biden is. But really, it's like detachment on all levels. It's detachment politically, it's detachment from reality, and it's also seems to be detachment from just the present, cognitively, mentally. All of it comes together to give what I think is a microcosm and an expression of where the U.S. empire is right now, because it truly is unhinged, it truly is detached, and it truly is just firing away wherever it can in order to maintain its hegemony. And so someone like Joe Biden actually ended up being, while I believe very damaging to the continued hegemony of the U.S. empire and continued dominance, those who rule the empire believed and still do believe that someone like Joe Biden is essentially the best that you can get at this moment, because he will do anything for this overall goal, even when what he is doing and what the overall U.S. foreign policy establishment is doing actually has the opposite effect. But this is the moment we're in. This is how it's going to continue to go. And just last comment on that remark about Iran versus Israel. Israel cannot, first of all, Israel can't defeat Hamas. It can't. It won't. Many people think that this is like conspiracy and Hamas is like operating in Israel's interest and all this. And no. Israel just can't beat the Palestinian resistance. We have to look at it as a whole. Israel definitely cannot beat the much stronger Hezbollah. Even degraded Hezbollah is far stronger than anything in the Palestinian resistance. Definitely cannot defeat Hezbollah. Israel cannot defeat and will never defeat Yemen and Ansarallah. They laugh as they're getting bombed underground in their bunkers, Ansarallah, because they know that they've been through this before and they have the capabilities to not only survive, but to continue to grow and essentially become one of the most popular forces in the region. Israel certainly cannot defeat Iran in any kind of hand-to-hand, face-to-face war. Israel will never engage in that. Israel wants the United States to come in with its own air capabilities, with its naval capabilities, and it wants the United States to use everything it has to destroy Iran. I would argue that the United States, if it tried to do that, would cause damage, certainly, but would create a worldwide global crisis that it cannot control. So, in effect, the United States can't defeat Iran. Many people saw the fall of Syria as this is a huge setback, and it is. I was in the movement to stop regime change in Syria since 2012, 13, 14. the earliest stages of it, when there were massive numbers of people on the streets trying to stop Obama in August of 2014 from co-signing and facilitating what would have been a catastrophic war on Syria that would have it would have potentially actually created a nuclear scenario because of the all the forces that would be pulled in to such a thing. But the fall of Syria was a protracted, long-term push by the empire that it did eventually succeed. However, Syria was never, I have to say this again, was never Iran. Syria was at one point a strong economy with a relatively decent military. But truthfully, the dirty war in Syria, if Russia did not step in, probably would have toppled the Syrian government in a much more violent, Muammar Gaddafi-like way. That's actually what would have happened to Syria if Russia hadn't stepped in 2015. So Syria was already at a very fragile point. And I don't even blame Syria for not being able to participate in the resistance against the genocide in Gaza to the extent that it was beyond weapons transfers to the resistance. I don't even blame it for that, because it was quite clear that the sanctions, along with the pressures being placed on it by external players, along with the fact that it couldn't recover from a dirty war, led it to its ultimate demise. That is not where Iran is, not even close. No matter what little internal political differences might exist in Iran, no matter the economic impact of sanctions, which in Iran are actually much more minimal than they are in Syria, no matter the whatever temporary embarrassment Iran may face by not doing Operation True Promise 3 right now, the fact is that, yes, Iran has 90 million people and it has a very strong military. So that's like a much stronger military, a much more capable military than any other. First of all, it might be the strongest military in the region if we count manpower plus arsenal. Israel, of course, has nukes, so you can just say it's de facto the strongest. But minus that, Iran could be said to have the strongest, and one that is almost itching for a test since the last war that it had to face, which was the Iran-Iraq War. So the U.S.-backed Iran-Iraq War. So in effect, let's all hold on for a second. A war in Iran, Israel versus Iran, it's not even going to happen unless the United States decides it wants to commit suicide as well.
Yeah, well said. I want to get to the main story now. Of course, I had to pick your brain a little bit. It's been a while since we had you on the show, so I greatly enjoy getting your perspective on these current events. Make sure you guys like and share the stream. We get to the main story now. Zoe, make sure you remind me to put timestamps in here. I wasn't planning on going that long in the first segment, but there was so much to talk about with the incoming Trump administration coming in, and Biden's record is going to be picked apart and destroyed throughout time. It's going to be one of the worst aged resumes. I'm not even talking about even among an humanitarian perspective, like not even among an anti-imperialist perspective, like me and Danny, but people who like want U.S. exceptionalism, people who want to root for the empire, they will look at Biden as extremely weak. But anyway, let's get to our next story. And I'm extremely excited to talk to you about this, Danny, because I was joking with you earlier before that we've been working on trying to shift the anti-Chinese sentiment in our society. And it's been wild to watch this miscalculation by the ruling class accelerated to such a degree. I've been doing this for around 4 years now, and I've been, especially over the last 2.5 years, I've been obsessed with China. I've been explaining to people I know about how far behind we are. I've been seeing this psyop of the ruling class trying to convince Americans to hate China. So people will wonder why I spend so much time talking about the DPRK, North Korea and China, because according to a poll, 35% of Americans want to nuke North Korea. So like, okay, we need to convince Americans to stop buying empire propaganda. So I take the other side. I explain why I try to humanize our enemy. So that's what I've been doing for the last few years. And this is why. This is one of many headlines I can show you guys. Most Americans have cold views on China. This is 2021. Here's what they think about China in their own words. And essentially them repeating every lie you've been told, Tiananmen Massacre style lies. They talk about how Chinese people eat their dogs, even though less than 0.1% of the population does. It's like the worst anti-Chinese lies. And this is what Americans believe for a very long time. And that's why it's been very interesting to watch the work of the State Department and the CIA just collapse overnight. And I'm very interested to get your thoughts on this because we have Americans that are talking to people in China. and people in China talking to people in America. And then we are learning from our Chinese brothers and sisters that essentially everything that we've been told by our government is a lie, while people in China are now realizing everything their government told us about America was 100% true. Here's a few memes I'll read off and I'll get your thoughts on this, Danny. Someone in the comments of Rednote asked me if we really had to pay for an ambulance in America or that was just their government propaganda. Do you guys see the difference between how the United States openly lies, but telling the truth about our society is so absurd? Even Chinese people are like, it can't be that bad. There's no way they spend that much money delivering a baby. And the last thing I'll share, and I'll get your thoughts, Danny. I know you have a lot to say on this. This app in a nutshell. The connection and the global solidarity when people realize we have this, we are way more similar. Well, I have way more in common with a Chinese worker than I do a fucking billionaire. And many Americans are understand this. So I'll put some funny memes up for you guys can laugh at. I want to get Danny Haiphong in here. This is JB's borrow ass fucking Rednote. I had a Rednote while I was talking shit about Israel. For some reason they let through, and that did pretty well. But JB did just one example. I can spend a lot of time showing you guys a lot of different images, clips, and all this stuff of this heartwarming solidarity. And people in China, Americans we ask like, man, are you guys okay with us being here? And they're like, no, please don't leave. They are loving this, guys. So here JB is sharing his story about his dialysis. And you will see here, there's over 2,000 comments. And if you scroll through this thread, it's 2,000 Chinese people wishing warm wishes to my brothers and sisters. My brother JB here. Come on, brother. Good luck. In China, we will take care of you. Dude, the comments in here is amazing. Meanwhile, what would they say in America? Fuck you. You don't deserve health care, you commie. Americans cheer. Americans don't give a fuck that we got record medical debt, that people like JB going to debt. Meanwhile, in China, dude, this is like the most heartbreaking story. They were right here all week. But anyway, the point is the solidarity is amazing. Before I share more, Danny, I would love to get your thoughts on this amazing phenomenon we are seeing right now with Chinese people. And I'm seeing people who are self-reported MAGA. I've seen some white suburbanites. I've seen this lady. I don't know if you saw this too. There was this white lady that was damn near in tears. Well, she was like, man, I feel so guilty about believing everything American people said about these beautiful people, the Chinese people. But sorry, Danny, that's my rant. I would love to hear anyway, what's your thoughts?
Sure. Well, I never thought I would see the day that a lot of the work that I've been trying to do over the past 5 years would accelerate to the point where just one trend, one phenomenon, TikTok being banned in the United States, causing an exodus of Americans to a Chinese app, would essentially accomplish a lot of what I've been trying to do for many, many years in a matter of weeks. So that's been incredible to see. My initial thoughts, Xiaohong Shu. So this app is one of the few apps that you can access. One thing that people don't understand is that China, one of the biggest reasons it's so successful right now is that it focused on sovereign development and its own independent economic development. People think that China's economic development is very tied to the world economy, of course, and the world so-called free market system. But essentially, China entered into that system under an arrangement where it said it was going to develop itself primarily, first and foremost, using its role in the global economy toward that end. And we can see this now. Xiaohong Shu, that is an app which Americans can access because it's one of the few where you don't need a Chinese phone number. But most other apps you do. If you want to get on WeChat, or not WeChat, I have WeChat, but you have to get help to get on WeChat. But let's say you want to get on Weibo, Bilibili, or the Chinese TikTok, the actual TikTok in China, Douyin. You need to have a Chinese phone number. So that is just one element of this. But in terms of the exodus, what's so interesting about this is that the whole foundation of this U.S. Cold War, this attempt to contain China, this attempt to destroy China, its whole ideological basis, its foundation is being undermined by just people engaging with each other on an app, Chinese people and Americans. We've seen how isolated ordinary Americans have become. They go on this app and they see what China is like. They see what Chinese people say about China. They see what Chinese people say about the United States, and they're absolutely shocked. But they shouldn't be shocked, because this is actually what's been going on for many, many, many years now. China's been on the rise, and the United States has been in a precipitous decline. And it's been so interesting to see how emotional people are getting. It's almost like their whole understanding of the world has been turned upside down. They were told to believe that China was this dictatorial nightmare that suppresses its own people and keeps people living in squalor, and that everything is artificial, and that people all think the same, and that they have no human rights or freedoms or anything like that. And then they're learning that actually Chinese people have far more economic rights. And arguably, when you have far more economic rights, you actually have far more personal individual rights, because you just have the ability to do more. Yes, Chinese people don't have to worry about medical debt in the same way. They don't have to worry about student debt. They don't have to worry about whether their illnesses are going to destroy their economic opportunities. They don't have to worry that their government is going to continue to cut back on vital necessities that people need to be economically viable. They don't have to worry about these things, because the Chinese government does the opposite. The Chinese government says, well, we want people to be economically viable. We need a strong economy. We need to develop ourselves. We need to ensure that people's not only needs are met, but that the advancements of the Chinese economy are being felt and accessed by more and more people. So that is what China's been doing. And we see that the high-speed rail, 47,000 kilometers, the fact that China's life expectancy is higher than the United States, the fact that China has better infrastructure across the board, roads, train systems. The train costs 50 cents in China. People are talking about how they don't have to pay the same amount of money, even out of pocket in China, than the United States. Well, that's because the government doesn't allow it. If the government allowed the healthcare system of the world market to rule, then yes, China's healthcare system would be more expensive even than the United States, because the Chinese population would just be one big liability. Every time it got sick, they would be jacking up the prices. So this is an essential difference between China and the United States that is now being felt by so many people. And it comes off of a trend that I think had already been developing, which is that more and more people around the world are beginning to see this difference. It's hard to escape. You even had an earthquake in Xizang, which is Tibet, which was devastating for so many people. But the Chinese government immediately responded, mobilized hundreds of thousands, millions of people to assist in the aid relief effort. And it ended up, it's still a crisis, because people lost their homes, mudslides, all the horrible things that happen to a mountainous region that goes through a massive earthquake. But people are helping each other, and the Chinese government, along with people, are going to repair the situation. In California, you don't have any such thing. You don't have California, the federal government, mobilizing millions of people to go to Los Angeles, repair, rebuild, and help address the situation. Actually, the fires have been raging on and on and on and on and on without the necessary assistance needed to stop it. So it's a difference in the direction of these two countries, and it's being exposed for all to see. It's a very interesting development, and it's one that I believe is going to keep on happening, because the more that the United States tries to escalate this war on China, the more Americans, the more ordinary working people, ordinary people as a whole, they're going to feel it. TikTok is this ridiculous example of what is a private company that, ByteDance is a private Chinese company that isn't even allowed in China. You can't use TikTok in China, the one that you can download on the US. You can't use it because they don't want it. They don't want any part of it in the Chinese domestic market. But to go after China using this app, saying it's a Chinese list, they're spying on us, they're taking information, blah, 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 all of this stuff to make you fear China. They're coming after Americans, the rights of people and the livelihoods of so many people in the United States. And that's going to keep on happening because the very fundamental and foundational basis of this overall attempt to wage war on China is rooted in this massive contradiction of the United States wants to wage a war on China, but it needs to envelop and involve the U.S. population in it, meaning that we're all going to feel it. The more the United States, militarily, economically, diplomatically, politically, propaganda, all of it at all levels. And now we're seeing it here with TikTok, and it's blowing back hard in the faces. You even have Donald Trump now. No. Donald Trump was all. No, let's not think that Donald Trump was not for this. He was 100% for this. Now he's like, oh no, gotta push it back a little bit, this ban, because again, that first 100 days in office, if you end up looking like a clown, if you end up looking weak, if you end up looking like you're doing something wildly unpopular, even to the MAGA Republican Party base, it's gonna hurt the Republican Party and the Trump administration moving forward into the prime period of establishing legitimate and governing control over the United States. That is a huge goal of the first 100 days of any administration, and this TikTok disaster is really ending up being just a real big defeat for the U.S. empire. And really, China doesn't even have to try. China just have to be there and do what China does, and the U.S. loses.
Yeah, that's absolutely. They don't have to do anything, because if they thought that banning TikTok, and we explained many times before how the ADL, Jonathan Chait, Break, all these people explain how the real reason why they wanted to ban TikTok is because they lost the narrative. They lost control of what people believe, and if they thought banning TikTok was going to be the solution, fam, if you guys want to laugh, go to Rednote and just search Israel and witness Israelis getting absolutely ate alive on this app. They are getting dragged. This is my super insanely viral tweet that I sent out yesterday, where Israelis went on the app like, how do you guys think about us? And let me just say this: people on Rednote, I'm a moderate on Israel compared to a lot of these, compared to China. Let's just say I'm mainstream. I don't know if moderate is the best way to put it. Let's just say my opinion on Israel is mainstream, because Israelis, as you guys see here, with this person saying death to colonizers, for people who think I'm the crazy radical. This is to be expected, though, after the what China went through with Japanese imperialism. The United States constantly fuck with them. Like they say, to the river, to the sea all the time. This comment was hilarious because this guy said, I won't say anything. I just want you to know that based on what Israel is doing, if Satan existed, he would have an Israeli tattoo on his back, which is fabulous. And this is why we're seeing the ruling class panic, because now we have another app where Americans are really exposed to how the world sees Israel. And we explain how America has been behind on Israel-Palestine, and people are just now realizing the depth of it. Danny, I know you pretty busy. We're going to wrap up here very soon. I was going to play this clip, just one, because I could show you guys a lot, but I'm going to show you guys just one clip just to illustrate what Americans are going through, realizing what life is like in China. And people looked at me like I was crazy the last 2 years. Danny, I know you've been through the same as well. Well, I was explaining to Americans, and I flipped my mom on this. She loved China now. First, she looked at me like I was crazy. I explained to her, and I explained to my friends, that how the average rent in China is $500 a month. Average yearly salary is $49,000 US. We live like gutter rats compared to China. Don't get me wrong, the top 1% in America lives great. But most people, as the name implied, not top 1%. But sorry, let me play this clip. And then, Danny, I'll give you in for one more time. We will begin to wrap up soon. I know you got other things you got to get to. So let's play this. I don't know if we're gonna play the whole thing. I just want you guys to get the gist of it. So let's play just a little bit of it.
Please stay for this, because I've reached the part in this whole like class consciousness part where I'm just filled with the most impotent rage, and like I'm talking that white hot, I need to sink my teeth and into something and scream kind of.
This is where us communists come in play, because this we are here to give people like this direction after their cultural shock. But anyway, sorry, let me continue.
Because what do you mean that it never had to be this hard for us? Like, what do you mean in other countries they don't have to spend 20% of their paycheck on groceries? What do you mean in other countries everyone can own homes because they're not paying $2,000 a month in rent, or that their mortgages aren't like their entire paycheck? What do you mean that people in China work one job and they don't even work 40 hours and they can easily afford their life? And then I'm over here working 60 hours a week, just me as a single parent, to like barely make ends meet, and I'm penny pinching every single second, and like there's so much of life that my kid misses out on and that I miss out on because of money and like work and no social support net. And you mean to tell me that it didn't have to be like this?
You goddamn right. It didn't have to be like this. And this is what leads rational people on the path of communism. It did not have to be like this, fam. And with this massive awakening, and I want to get your thoughts on this. This will be the final thing. I'll try and squeeze them in these receipts I can here real quick here. This is why the ruling class is now freaking out about Rednote. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this. But look at the article here. As TikTok refugees flock to Rednote, a U.S. official says Chinese app could be banned too. So you guys see how the veneer of freedom is gone now that they lost the narrative? I'll just read the first part here. While the U.S. government TikTok ban set to kick in on Sunday, Americans have been flocking to an alternative social media program, but it's not another Chinese app. And experts say it could present the same, if not even more issues. Danny, they are not handling this well. Now compare this to how Xi Jinping is reacting. So the ruling class in America is freaking out over the concept of Americans talking to people that they are told to hate. Meanwhile, Xi Jinping, his statement, and this from Carl Zahl, we had him on Wednesday. Xi Jinping, like, this is great. U.S.-China relations lies with the people. So this is Xi Jinping saying, we want peace with America. The American government hates me. I can't do anything. So the best chance we have is hoping that the people of the Americas change. It's beautiful that Xi Jinping is embracing it while our ruling class is rejecting it. Now I'm going to ask you this. Who is the true axis of evil? So that's my last presentation. Always great to have you on, Dan. I love to pick your brain on stuff. Any last thoughts? Any final thoughts you want to share with us regarding Rednote, China, anything that's on your mind as we begin to wrap up the stream? Always great to have you on RBN, brother.
Well, yeah, I've been to China 4 times now in 5 years, and everything that people are finding out on Rednote is absolutely true. Actually, all of the reactions that Chinese people are having on Rednote to what people in the United States are saying about their country are the exact reactions that I get every time I'm there. Actually, I get an interesting reaction where when I am marveling at, let's say, high-speed rail, I was on the Fuxing back in the summer of 2024, late summer of 2024, which is the high-speed rail from Shanghai to Beijing, and you can get the equivalent distance of New York to Chicago, which I believe is somewhere up to 1,200 kilometers, something absolutely ridiculous. You can get that distance in 4 hours time. Where in the United States, if you were to take the Amtrak, at minimum, it would take you 19 hours, and you would be just absolutely bombarded with multiple stops and probably technical issues and all kinds of other things that would delay your trip. Not to mention that you would be paying, oh gosh, an Amtrak trip that long would probably be 2, 3, 4 times more the cost. So that alone, when I marvel about these things, when I marvel about the efficiency, the cleanliness, and the cost of China's public transit system, in the most expensive city, Shanghai, 50 cents, US cents, 3 Chinese RMB or yuan. That is, I am looked at by Chinese people. They say, why are you surprised by this? This should just be expected. This is kind of shocking to hear you being surprised by normal things. And I think that is what is creating so much of a cognitive dissonance for people in the United States now on Xiaohongshu. They're seeing that China actually is not only not the evil society they thought it was, but it is a society that is progressing and moving in the direction that they would like to see their country going. This is the irony, is China is a lot different from the United States. China had to deal with underdevelopment, had to defeat invading powers, had to get out of a century of humiliation, had to build a socialist country in order to do this, had to do something which no other country had been successful at just yet, which is build a mixed economy, a socialist market economy, one that the Soviet Union could only dream of having experimented with, never got the chance to even be able to consider it. So China is doing something that is very unique, but it really is the direction that a lot of people in the United States probably would want. People in the United States would want to continue to make money, continue to pursue their own opportunities, right? Careers, these kind of things. But they also want their basic needs met, and they also want the overall development of society to be moving in the direction toward justice, toward a condition where you don't have people sleeping outside on the streets. You don't have this just rampant poverty that is intimately tied to the incredible levels of inequality and wealth that is being hoarded by such a small number of people. You know, China has rich people, but China doesn't have rich people that control things in the way that the United States does. And that is a big difference. Corporations control the government in the United States. In China, the government controls the corporations. The government regulates the corporations. The government ensures, the party ensures that people's lives and livelihoods are protected. And so all of this is to say is that that's what people are learning. And every time I've been to China, right, I think it's a more powerful Xiaohongshu moment. So I really do hope that more people from this experience travel there, because when you go, the words that you're getting from Chinese people, the imagery that you're seeing, that you're learning, is far more powerful. You ride a high-speed rail, you get on that transit system, you see the incredible levels of development, the cleanliness, the attention to the environment, the investment in renewable energy, the fact that Chinese people are very hopeful and confident that their lives are better. They can tell you stories about generations past. They can tell you about when there was no food, when there was no industry, when there was no jobs, when they didn't have opportunities because of the abject poverty that a century of humiliation left them in. They can still tell you this, and then they can tell you how the country is moving in the right direction for them. Doesn't mean it's the right direction for us, even though there are so many parts about what China is doing that we can indeed learn from. So I think that's what Xiaohongshu is showing. That's what this experience of Rednote is showing. You see it. People are absolutely taken aback by how Chinese people actually live, by how China is actually developing, and how this reflects so poorly on them, the United States, on the society that they live in. They are feeling their own powerlessness, and they are feeling how everything that they've been told is not about creating some kind of factual analysis and creating an image of the world that will help the United States be a better place, but actually, and be a more just place. But actually what it is just to get you to hate other people, so that not only are you ready and primed for war, but your life can be taken from, that you can have your situation. This is the interconnection between imperialism and how we live here. Every bit of propaganda, every move toward war with China is not just about war with China. It's a war on you. It's a war to ensure that you continue to live how you live, that your conditions continue to worsen, that your life gets worse and worse, because the war on China profits the same people that all of this, the medical debt, the struggle, the financial debt, the housing crisis, the economic instability. All of that profits the same people that are profiting off of trying to build a war with China. So hopefully this development continues to move us in the direction of seeing that connection. And it seems like it has massively accelerated in just a short time, this overall connection that people are making.
Yep. And now you guys see why there's almost nothing that makes me question your critical thinking skills as a political analyst than falling for anti-China propaganda. That's why I would concede that Tucker Carlson, for example, would do a good Ukraine segment. But the fact that he fell for anti-China propaganda, I can't take you seriously, man. Like, that just is my personal opinion. But anyway, Danny, thank you for your time. I'm going to read the last 2 super chats. I was putting them up on screen. I didn't want to interrupt Danny. I'll read the last 2 I seen come in. Thank you for the 1999 Martin. Thank you for the talk banger after banger. We had another banger today. We just had Dave DeCamp on Wednesday. We had Carl Zah on. So we had Carl Zah and Danny on the same week. Rachel Blevins as well. Guys, banger at the banger. So I hope you guys got a lot to catch up on this week. I know you guys haven't seen every hour, every show I did this week. I was on Pasta's show, Nico's show as well. So there's a lot that you guys can catch up on. I'm glad that you guys watched this. I think we had a great week. Another foreign policy power hour, as I've been calling these, with Danny Haiphong. So appreciate all the support in the super chat. Last super chat I see, then we will wrap up. Thank you for the 499 Alley. Wait until Americans learn they also been lied to about Russia. Wait till they learn about how they've been lied about North Korea. But you guys heard my North Korean rants many times before. North Korea Power Hour is coming. I don't want to do it alone, though. I could, but I want to have someone like there are plenty of like Korean accounts. I don't want to be like the only guy. I want to have like maybe 2 other people with me to do the North Korean Power Hour. You guys know I love ranting about it. But anyway, Danny, let's get you out of here. What you got coming up? Make sure you guys follow Danny Haiphong. You're killing the game. What's coming up next?
Oh yeah, well, you can just go to my YouTube channel and subscribe, watch the videos there. Be streaming probably again, posting clips, and then streaming again next week after this inauguration. I'm actually going to be on Jimmy Dore's show in not too long from now, so to talk about the same thing. So Stay tuned. I think 5:45 I'll be on that.
Nice. Thank you guys for watching. I'll be back next week. We had a lot of content, a ton of content on the channel for you guys this week. So if you miss any of the shows, make sure you take this weekend to catch up. I'll be taking a few days off myself. So I will see you guys in a few days. Make sure you catch up on live streams. JB show is scheduled for Sunday. Sabby and JB show was yesterday. If you missed it, I appreciate you guys, fam. Support the Patreon and follow my great guest, Danny Haiphong. Thank you guys. Have a great weekend.